Hi and welcome back to our kitchen. Today we're going to share a special treat with you, homemade tamales. There's nothing better than the taste of a fresh, steaming hot tamal with some fresh salsa made right in your own kitchen. We make our tamales using Maseca, which is a corn flour that can be found in many of your favorite grocery stores or online if you prefer. I'm not going to lie, making tamales is an all-day event, but the payoff is so worth it. For a little money, you can make dozens of delicious tamales, and if frozen properly, they can be enjoyed for up to a year. So if you're ready to learn how to make them, come join us in our kitchen and we'll take a walk through the process with you. Our tamales will feature 4 different fillings for a variety of flavors. First up is pork. We're using a boneless pork shoulder roast that we slow cooked the night before for 10 hours, so it's incredibly tender and easy to shred. In the crock pot, we combine 4 pounds of pork, half an onion, a half a head or 5 to 6 cloves of garlic, half a bunch of cilantro, and a tablespoon of salt. Next up is chicken. We only used breast meat, about 6 breasts for this batch. We boil the chicken using the same ingredients to flavor the broth, with the addition of chicken bouillon. The broth will be reserved after cooking and will be a key component of the tamal dough. Our third filling features pinto beans, or whatever type of dried bean you prefer. We're cooking the beans in our Instant Pot, which is a pressure cooker capable of cooking these beans perfectly in 20 minutes. For flavor, we're simply adding half an onion, half a head of garlic, and water to the recommended level in the pot. Once the pot is covered, it's a one-button process to cook the beans. We're making a salsa verde for the chicken filling, which starts with tomatillos. They are boiled with jalapeno, garlic, and onion until tender, then liquefied with a teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of salt and pepper, a teaspoon of chicken bouillon, and then finally 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. Flavor and season this to taste, so you can add more or less based on your preference. This is all blended on high until smooth, and we made a large batch so there would be enough for the filling and then to also use on the tamales later. Once the beans have finished cooking, we'll blend them as well. Make sure you remove the onion and the garlic prior to liquefying. We used enough beans to fill the blender with a little added water for the right consistency. After they're liquefied, we'll fry them with a tablespoon of lard and a half a cup of adobo salsa until the mixture combines and thickens. This is the same red adobo salsa that we feature in our pozole video on our channel. If you want to check out that process, follow the link on the screen. And here you can see we have shredded the chicken and the pork. Now in a pan, add some lard and then the shredded pork to give it a quick saute. The added flavor comes from our adobo salsa. We made a fresh batch, but we still had some left over from our pozole, so we'll use that up first. You want to mix that in nice and thorough. Now, there isn't a specific amount for this process. Add as much of the salsa as needed to thoroughly coat the meat. Check the flavor throughout and season with salt and pepper if needed. We're not going to use all of our adobo salsa. We're going to want to reserve about a cup to add to the tamal dough for a nice added flavor. Let that combination simmer for a few minutes, then remove from the pan and place to the side until we're ready to fill the tamales. So we're going to repeat the process for the chicken filling with two slight differences. First, we're using avocado oil instead of lard. And second, we replace the adobo salsa with the salsa verde. Follow the same steps, check the seasoning, and add salt and pepper to taste. Add the green salsa, and then once that filling has simmered for a few minutes, remove and reserve alongside the pork filling. And here are our first three fillings ready for the next step in the process. So we decided halfway through the recipe to add a fourth filling and salsa combination. The salsa is a spicy orange salsa that we'll share in an upcoming video. We chopped and sauteed shrimp and scallops and added them directly into the salsa to simmer, much like the pork and chicken. Now the great thing about tamales is how creative you can be with your fillings and salsas. This seafood filling is probably one of my favorites. Now we need to prepare the corn husks that we're going to use to wrap our tamales. We're simply separating the husks and placing them individually into a large tub, making sure to clean any corn silk or debris from each of them. Once we've cleaned and separated them all, we'll fill the tub with warm water to soften them and make them easier to fold. The next step is to make the dough. We're using 2 bags of Maseca tamal flour, which works perfectly for us. This will make enough dough for approximately 150 tamales. So in a large bowl or basin, we'll combine both bags of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and then 2 teaspoons of table salt. And we'll mix those thoroughly. Next, we're going to add in 1 quart of melted lard, and we're going to mix that into the flour mixture very well. As you're mixing this in, it will give the flour a slightly grainy consistency, much like fine sand. Try to break apart any large chunks of flour and make sure that that lard is mixed in very, very well. And if lard isn't your thing, you can substitute Crisco shortening. Here's where we'll begin adding in a portion of the chicken broth that we held in reserve. This is going to be a little hot still, so mix this in well with a spatula. You definitely don't want to mix this by hand quite yet. We also add in that reserved adobo salsa that we saved, and we're going to mix that in very well. This is going to give the dough just a little bit of extra flavor. Continue to add broth and mix that up until the dough is soft to the consistency of peanut butter. You'll want to taste it once or twice too to make sure that we have enough salt in there, so you can season with a little extra salt if needed. So as you mix through, just remember we'll be spreading this dough across the corn husks. So if it's too stiff, you'll just add more water until you reach the desired consistency. Filling the corn husk is a simple process. Run your finger across the husk to feel which side is smooth. This is the side you will spread the dough onto. Use a spoon to spread the dough across the middle of the husk down to the wide end. Add the filling on top of the dough. Fold the sides inward to cover the center, then fold the top down to close the tamal. Place to the side and repeat the process until you finish your fillings or your dough. Here it is again. Check for the smooth side. Spread the dough down the middle. Add the filling and then fold to close. One important thing to remember when filling your tamales: be consistent with the amount of dough and the amount of filling you use in each tamal so that they're approximately the same size and thickness. This will ensure that they cook evenly and at the same time. And this is one of my favorite seafood tamales. And then for the bean-filled tamales, we also added a queso fresco, a fresh cheese, and sliced pickled jalapenos for a nice spicy tamal. Tamales are steamed for almost an hour in a large steamer pot. Because they take so long and because there's only about 2 inches of water in the bottom of the pot, they need to be stacked like a volcano, leaving an empty space in the center in case you need to add water. To make this process easier, we fold a piece of aluminum foil into a ring and place that in the center of the pot bottom to start the stack. The tamales are simply placed around the bottom of the pot in a ring, stacking them up until you reach the top of the pot. We fit around 60 tamales in this batch, 30 pork and 30 chicken. We used small strips of corn husk in between the flavors in order to separate them. So once the pot is full, we place the lid on the pot, set it back onto the stove on high heat. Once the water starts to boil and steam starts to vent from the lid, the tamales will take at least an hour to cook. You need to check it occasionally to ensure there is enough water in the bottom of the pot. If it runs dry, carefully pour hot water through the open center in the middle of the tamales. After an hour, it's time to check them. Carefully remove one tamal from the pot and replace the cover. As you open them up, if the dough sticks, that means that they're not done yet. This one's perfect, so we're going to add some salsa and give it a try. It's definitely hot, but oh man, is it exquisite. So these are the finished product. We still have another batch to put in the steamer, and we'll freeze another few dozen uncooked. Let's try one more to make sure the chicken tastes just as good. Man, these are so delicious, especially with that fresh salsa on the top. So thanks again for joining us today. Please share and subscribe if you liked this video. We'll see you next time.